Okay. So welcome everyone. Thank you for joining. Tonight is a fireside chat of Purple Martin Fanatics group. We're a Purple Martin Fanatics group on Facebook. And tonight we have a guest speaker, Greg Ballard, our airgun expert and shooting techniques expert that will provide us with a lot of information, hopefully, on the best air guns, proper shooting techniques for a lot of us that are still amateurs. And if you have any questions, please enter them in the chat. And we're going to let Courtney be our moderator tonight to try to moderate and help everybody make sure we get your questions addressed. And welcome, Greg Ballard. And Greg, if you'll tell us a little bit about your site and yourself, that would be helpful. And let's kick it off.
Hold on just a second. We're going to do a little different tonight than normal because there's going to be lots of questions. I'm going to mute everybody, and that way it will cut down on background noise. And if you have a question, there is a raise hand icon somewhere. I think it's down. Well, I'm on a laptop. It's on down at the bottom of the screen. It says reactions. I think that's yes. If you can find reactions. Kathy, you're still muted.
Can't believe you muted me.
Well, when I click, I have mute all.
So there's just reactions, Brad. There's no raise hand.
Yeah,
so
there
maybe,
is.
Huh?
There is on mine.
It's a clapping hand.
Well, if I go to reactions, there's a bar at the bottom that says raise hand. I just did it.
Okay.
Travis has his hand raised too.
Okay, perfect. All right, then everybody, if you have the raise hand option, raise your hand. Or second backup, if you don't, you can wave. Or enter a comment or a question in the chat, and Courtney will make sure that your question gets addressed by Greg. Okay, Brad, anything else?
Well, I have my hand raised now. I don't know how to unraise it. I guess Courtney can unraise it.
Courtney,
all right.
Yeah. Okay, Greg, take it away.
Okay, my name is Greg Ballard. I live right on the border of Oklahoma and Arkansas. I always call it Arklahoma because that's what the people in our area call us. Just south of Fort Smith, Arkansas, for location if you was to look it up on a map. And I've got probably close right at 500 houses here now for the Martins. And I will fill all of them this year, and I'm almost full now, so still got a lot of second years to come, and it's pretty chaotic here already. It's not a pretty day today. It's been raining all day, pretty bad, so they took the opportunity and they're all out flying and eating now since it quit raining a couple hours ago. But probably before we get done with this, they'll start coming back in. And so I was asked to talk about air guns. I've been shooting air guns since I was a little boy. So more than 50 years worth of air gun shooting. So I've been through an awful lot of different kinds of air guns. And so I'm going to cover 5 types of air guns that are available for you to buy, and some of their pros and cons and such for each of those. And then I can show you some of the ones that I have here as well. So we're going to start off with an air rifle that is called a spring piston air rifle. So these are kind of characterized by a cocking mechanism on the air rifle itself that you will pull back one time. This compresses a spring that's inside of the air rifle. And when you pull the trigger, the spring decompresses really fast and pushes air out of the barrel. So people in the industry, they call these springers, And I have one here. Can you hand me that one, please? My wife handed me a.
Dang, Greg has an assistant.
Yes. This is an RWS model 48. And this is how you would cock it here. So you got one cock on the side here and you'd push it in, and it's one time you cock it and it's cocked now, and you can pull the trigger on it and it will shoot one shot. So it's a single shot loading air rifle. So you have to reload it by hand each time that you shoot it. It's very powerful. So it's like I say, it's kind of a foolproof type of a gun. One of the issues of it, the con of it, is that it has a kind of a forward recoil. So when you shoot this air rifle, it springs forward because the spring decompresses. So the recoil is backwards to a normal recoil of a rifle. So it actually jumps forward in your hand instead of backwards. And this will wreak havoc on a normal rifle scope. So if you put a normal rifle scope on this type of rifle and shoot it, it will destroy that scope in just a short amount of time. So you have to buy a air rifle rated scope for this kind of rifle. They are very accurate, but they're also very loud. And so that's the first kind. This was one of my first adult rifles. I call it an adult rifle, you know, from being a kid up to this is an adult rifle for me. I don't use it any longer. I've progressed up through the ranks to different types of air rifles, and we'll discuss those in a bit as well. So RWS is a very good one. They're kind of pricey, but they're very good if you are wanting to shoot that type of a air rifle. It's a Springer. Then they have recently come out with a new style, which is the same kind of concept as the Springer air rifle, but it uses a nitrogen gas filled piston. And you will see a lot of these will have like a NP in their name. So like a trail NP or a nitro piston. And it does the same thing. It's a single cocking air rifle that you will cock the thing back just like you saw me do there, but instead of compressing a spring, it will compress gas that's in the side of a piston chamber. And so by doing that, you get the same effect, except that you don't have that violent forward recoil. The gun is much quieter than a Springer is because it doesn't have the spring decompressing. And it's a very good option for what we're going to use it for protecting our Martins. Cost of those is not near as much as for a Springer or the PCP, so we'll talk about in a little while. So this is one that I recommend quite a bit when people are asking me what should I get for my first air gun. So you can get those. A brand is like Gammo, makes a pretty good one. So you can look those up, and I can't cover all the air rifles. There are just hundreds of air rifles out there these days. So it's quite popular. And so for one of these, you'll probably spend $200, $250 at the most. You can find some that are less than that. It's less than 200 on that. So those will be a really good choice and to do. And then you got another one, which is CO2. So a CO2 air rifle uses small cartridges filled with CO2 compressed air. The modern day ones can use one, and some of them will use actually two. They'll have twin cylinders inside of them. And so that you can buy these cartridges and keep them on hand and insert them in there, and they will shoot the air rifle and discharge the little CO2 cartridges. So these are also not horribly expensive air rifles, and I also recommend these for people that just want to start getting into the air rifles. And one of the cons on a CO2 air rifle is that they are somewhat temperature sensitive. So if you have it sighted in the wintertime, say, and then you go out in the hot summer, then it will shoot differently because of the compressed air is heated up. So you have to check your sights on the rifle quite often to make sure that you're still on your target. So that's one of the cons to those. But they're pretty accurate. They're pretty quiet as well. And cost wise, they're good. And so one of the best ones of these is a Hammerelli. 850 Hammerelli is a really good type of gun. So then you have the old variable pump styles. Somebody has a comment question.
Who has a question? Kathy?
I'm trying to get off mute. Can you hear me, Greg?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, I was trying to get off mute. I have two. Can you talk a little bit about the challenges for people with the Springer type gun? And I'll be more specific. One of the challenges I had when I tried a Springer gun was I have carpal tunnel in my right hand. So I struggled a lot with doing that.
So the cocking action on one can be up to like 35 pounds of cocking strength. So you saw that even here sitting in a chair, it takes a pretty good amount of effort to cock this. Some of them cock from the bottom and some cock from the side. And it does take a pretty good amount of force. So if you're not pretty strong, then you will struggle with cocking this, and you have to cock it every time you shoot it. The biggest problem with the gun to me is the forward recoil. It's such a backwards event, and it's somewhat violent when it shoots that you have to learn how to shoot it properly. So you can't like grab it and just squeeze it tight and squeeze it into your shoulder tight and shoot a Springer gun, or you'll be very inaccurate. So with the Springer gun, you need to let it shoot, and you're just basically holding it loosely and let it shoot and let it do its motions on its own, and it'll do that same motion every time. But if you try to squeeze it too tightly, then you're going to impart your own self into it, and you'll never be the same twice. And you'll find it's a lot less accurate than it really is.
Thank you. Thank you for addressing the hold on it too, because that was going to be my second question. My third is just a comment. I had an RWS 850. I have one.
Yes.
And it has the CO2 bottle. And I experienced what you're talking about. If it's really cold out, the pressure really goes down. And when it warms up outside, the pressure goes up. And so I really have a lot of inconsistency when there's different temperatures out. And the other problem with the RWS at 850, I did find online that you could add another a modified spring in it to help with that, increase that pressure.
Yes.
But if you don't know how to tear apart a gun, it's a big challenge.
Yes, it is. And so that's, to me, is the only downfall to the CO2, other than if you're going to shoot an awful lot, like you're just going to target shoot. I mean, it costs you because you have to buy those cartridges over and over and over and over again.
That's the other part. Yep. Yeah.
And so it's a good choice if you're able to shoot it often, and you know the cartridge cost is not a big thing. It's a good option for what we do with it.
Yeah, but
my wife suggested that I squeeze off the trigger on this RWS here and let you listen to it since I cocked it. I'll shoot it over my shoulders, trying not to kill a duck. So.
Wow, that was quiet.
So I didn't hear anything.
That's a loud one, and that's a loud gun. So that's an RWS model 48 Diana.
Wow.
I promise you, in real life, they are much louder than what we just heard on.
Yeah, you must not have caught it. Yeah, because it sounds quite loud when you shoot it right here.
They couldn't even hear that. A metal.
Yes. The ping of the spring ping. So this Kyle says that the mic didn't catch that noise because it's a lot louder than what you're suggesting.
Okay, I'm sorry to throw you off your presentation. I just want questions.
No, ask questions constantly because I really don't have a big presentation built up. I'm just talking.
Okay.
So it's not like I sat down and wrote this out and such. I'm just talking.
Okay, thanks, Greg.
So we were on variable pump. These are your old daisies and such that you probably grew up with if you shot from a kid up. And these are the ones that you got a cocking handle on there and you will repeatedly pump them. And the more times you pump them, the more power that they have. There's some of those that are fairly good and some of them that are not so good. One thing I will suggest on that is to not get a BB gun. So BBs are not very accurate. So don't get one that shoots BBs and get one that shoots pellets. So if you do that, don't get caught up in the shooting the BBs because you'll be very frustrated. So get one that shoots pellets for sure. And the variable pump, they're not very costly and they can adjust the power on them. So you can pump it just 3 times or you can pump it 10 times and you can have a weaker shooting gun or a stronger shooting gun. So that comes into play a lot depending on your background downrange because a lot of people will think of a pellet gun, a modern pellet gun, kind of like a BB gun that they saw when they were a kid, and that's not what they are anymore. So the modern day pellet guns are very strong and very powerful, and you got to be very aware of what is downrange of your shooting.
We have a question from Nancy. She says, do all of the air rifles shoot the same pellet?
No, they do not shoot the exact same pellet because you got things that are calibers of air rifles. The most common one is a 177, and then you have a 22 caliber, and then you have 25 calibers. I've got a frog singing. Can you hear it?
Yeah, I hear the frog.
And so you got the 177, a 22, and a 25 are your most common. But today's they've got calibers all the way up to 72 caliber for air rifles.
Wow.
For shooting things like wild hogs and deer and things. So there's just about anything. I've got a set of pellets here that I've put on a board. So we'll see if you can see these.
So we have another question from Travis and Anna. They said, is there a particular caliber you would recommend for beginners?
I'm going to recommend a 22 caliber always. So the 177 is most common. 22 calibers are getting very common nowadays as well. 22 calibers are shoot slower than their 177 calibers. So one of the things you'll find when you're shopping for air guns is they all will say this one shoots 1,200 feet per second, or this one shoots, 1,400 feet per second. And because that's their marketing, is that they're marketing the speed of the air rifle. The problem with that is that air rifles don't shoot very good when you shoot them fast. So you're not really interested in how fast that the air rifle shoots. You're interested in how well does it shoot. So you're going to find that with pellets, they fly the best between 600 and 900 foot per second. So that 1,200, 1,400 foot per second pellet will not shoot nearly as well as one that's shooting 700 foot per second. So some of the air rifles, I have one that's here, has an adjustment on it so that you can increase or decrease that power to change the power band on the air rifle to get it to where it shoots the absolute best. And that, I don't know if you could see this very well.
Yes, I can.
So on this side over here, that's a 177 pellet. The one in the middle is a 22 caliber pellet. And then the one on the far side over here is a 25 caliber pellet. So it doesn't sound like much of a difference between the pellets, but as you can see, it's pretty drastic between them.
Yeah.
So, yes.
And
so
let me interject something, Greg. Not only do you have different calibers, you have different weights.
Yes.
Different weights of pellets.
And different styles of pellets. So there's hundreds of different kinds of pellets that you will shoot. So these styles here that have the kind of the round noses, there are Diabolo styles of pellets. Those tend to shoot very well. And my frog's back.
Your frog in the back.
So pellet guns are notoriously picky when it comes to pellets. So if you have an air rifle that you get and it doesn't shoot what you bought that well, buy another pellet and try it. And there will be a pellet that gun loves and it'll shoot it really well. So don't get frustrated if you get one and it doesn't shoot so good right off the bat. Just buy. And they sell sampler packs that you can buy at places like Pyramid Air or Airgun Depot and such, where you can buy a sampler pack of pellets and all the different weights and the styles and such that you can buy, and you can shoot groups with it and find the one that your gun likes the best. So if you're lucky, then there'll be one at Walmart sells or something that you can get really easily, but a lot of times it's not, and you'll have to order them. But accuracy is the key. It's not speed, it's not power, it's accuracy. So modern day air rifles can shoot less than a 1-inch group at 50 yards pretty easily, and the good ones can shoot under a 1/2 of an inch. Brad hears something.
Yeah,
yards.
I've got a frog here that must have heard your frog because.
Oh, that's hilarious.
And I have never heard it sitting out here before.
He's got a frog that's croaking back to this frog.
Oh no.
Yeah, that's hilarious.
It's the first. That's the first online hookup ever for frogs.
Exactly.
Yeah, online frog hookup. I'm not seeing much. That's hilarious. So the variable pump ones, we covered those there. That's a good option for you. But the ones I will always recommend the gas piston and the CO2 over the variable pump and over the Springer. The Springer mostly because it's difficult to shoot and it's loud and it's hard to cock and that sort of thing. And also over time, the springs get weak and need to be replaced or have to replace the gun. And they typically are a more expensive rifle to start with as well. But the CO2 and the gas piston ones are relatively inexpensive, shoot really well, pretty darn quiet, and you don't have to worry about a lot of maintenance on them. So the last type of air gun that we'll cover is a PCP gun, and it's called pre-charged pneumatic. Brad's doing the fist pump because he's got one. So the pre-charged pneumatic is something that's come out in the last 10 years or so, that's hit the market with strong force. They're my favorite of all. I really like them. They have everything in the world going for them, but they also have some cons we'll talk about. They're extremely quiet. For the most part, this black one that I have over here is not nearly as quiet, but they're quiet. They're very accurate. They're repeaters, which means that you can usually run a bolt action on there and shoot 8 or 10 shots before you have to refill the magazine. So you get a really quick follow-up shot. And like a variable pump, you have to pump that thing 10 times every time you shoot it. So it's you can't get a fast second shot with it. So that's another con for it. But with this one here, it's bolt action type guns for the most part. And you can just run the bolt forward and backwards and it'll load the next pellet into the chamber and you can just keep shooting. And so a pre-charged pneumatic has a cylinder on there and you will charge it up with air, and you can do that with a high pressure hand pump, or you could do it with a high pressure air compressor. So one of the cons of this gun is they're fairly pricey to purchase, and then you have to add on to that cost by buying hand pumps or air compressors, and it has to be a specialty air compressor. It can't be just one that you run in your shop. So it has to be an air compressor that can do at least 4,500 PSI. These guns charge up around 3,000 PSI. And they shoot best with less in there. So from 2,200 up to about 2,600 where they actually shoot the best on the PSI for the PCPs. And Benjamin Marauder is an extremely good one that's out there. There's a new one that's hit the market here recently called an Avenger. That one there has got lots of good reviews. It costs less than the Marauder. And I am probably going to end up with one of those myself to test. A friend of mine here locally has got one recently, and he's going to test it out for me. They're about $300 to $350 new. So that is a really good price for such a good air gun. It's got lots of good features about it. So that would be one I would recommend, even though I haven't personally shot it, just based off the reviews and the features that it has. That would be an ideal one. I have a couple of Benjamin Marauders. I have a rifle, Benjamin Marauder, and I also have a pistol, Benjamin.
Wow, that's a rifle, not a pistol.
It's a pistol, but I've placed a small carbine stock on it.
Oh, okay.
So, and you can see, this is the pistol part here.
Oh, okay.
This is a add-on stock, and you can see it's even got a fancy PVC cheek piece.
Cheek rest. Yep.
Yes. Yeah. Fancy. So hillbilly engineered cheek piece out of a PVC pipe on that. So, and this is the rifle version of a Benjamin Marauder. And I believe I could probably shoot it too. Now, you didn't hear the last one. You definitely won't hear this one if that's the case, because it is extremely quiet.
We heard that, or I did. I heard that one.
Yeah, they're very quiet. That one's a 22 caliber. So it shoots a 14.3 grain pellet, about 900 foot per second. So I can shoot that 20 times in a row and put all the bullets, pellets in one hole at 30 yards. So it shoots very, very well. So on that.
I just pulled up, I bought a Marauder last year. Bothered Greg for 2 months about it. And I'm not as good a marksman as Greg is, but for those of you who want to see, can y'all see that?
Yes.
That is a 5-shot group at 30 yards.
Wow.
And it'll do that all day long.
That's impressive.
Yes.
What scope do you have on it?
I'm sorry?
Did you have a scope on it?
Yes, I have a Hawk. Big one. It's like a 4x6, like a 4x16x50 or something like that.
Okay.
Milrad reticle. I don't know what Greg's thoughts are on ranging reticles, but since I have got 4 or 5 scopes now that have a reticle that you can maybe not judge yardage with, but you've got something to hold. You got a hash mark, a tick, or something to hold at different distances. It's made a world of difference in the longer range shooting.
We've got a question or two that come in. I saw them come across the screen, but I can't read them fast enough.
Kyle wants to know what the carry distance is on let's just say a 22 pellet if you miss.
Okay, so distance carried on a pellet will depend upon the angle of the shot, velocity, weight of the pellet, and all that. So lots of variables, but I can give you a really good rough estimate on it. And so the max angle where you get the longest, farthest away shots is between 26 and 29 degrees holding. So if you think about that, if you're shooting at the top of your gourd rack from the ground, you're going to be about there. So that is where you're going to get your maximum downrange trajectory. And a 22 caliber air rifle at 900 foot per second is going to travel about 300 yards to 350 yards at that angle. So you have to be cognizant of what's downrange of you for at least a quarter mile downrange of you if you shoot up into the air like that. You also have to be cognizant of ricochet if you're shooting at the ground, because the pellet will ricochet and travel. Of course, it loses a lot of its velocity when it hits and bounces, but it can still travel a couple hundred yards. So you have to be well aware of what's downrange of your shooting at all times. So a lot of people would not imagine that air rifle can do that, but this black air rifle that I have here, it'll make it 800 yards downrange.
Wow.
So you got to be very, very aware of what you're doing, because they're not toys anymore. The little Daisy Red Riders, you know, they won't even break your skin if you shoot somebody with them, but this black one here would kill you.
Greg.
Yes, that one right there.
Don't you be talking about my custom.
Yeah,
please.
that one there.
This is custom built.
Yeah, that one there uses a ballpoint spring to shoot the pellet, basically.
I told some folks before you got on, I said, if anybody has one of these and wants to kill sparrows with it, they need to hold it like this.
Yes. Yeah, and swing it at it. Yeah.
Swing it at them.
Yep. And it's a BB shooter, so if you hit one, you'd be lucky.
Yeah.
But hey, I grew up with one of those, so I've chased stuff with them from youth, and then I got a variable pump Daisy, and some old nylon 66 type guns, that old black stock with the white diamond on them and stuff, and crossmans and such, and daisies. So I grew up with those, so part of my history, but I don't shoot those any longer.
Hey, Greg.
Yeah.
In general, can you recommend a certain brand of scope that a person could use?
Yes, I can recommend brands of scopes, and the thing about scopes is they can vary in price hugely and quality hugely on there. So if you're shooting a Springer, you have to get one that says air rifle on it, or it will not last. So if you can take an expensive rifle scope and put it on a Springer gun, and it will break it, because they are set up to have a recoil going the other direction, so they're not braced against the impact going forwards. So for that, if you wanted to go a cheap air rifle scope, something like a Winchester air rifle scope will suffice. They're probably $80 or so for one of those. Nowadays, I haven't bought one of those in a while, but the Hawk scopes, like Brad mentioned, are extremely good for air rifles if you want to spend some money on those. So they're going to range anywhere from $200 up to $500 for one of those Hawk type scopes. They're extremely good. If you get the CO2 type, it'll shoot any scope. So if you just have a rifle scope, you can mount it on there. So they don't have a recoil to mention. So any rifle scope that you want, the Tasco type scopes or millet scopes and such, those all work well. Nikons and Bushnell, everything like that will work fine on those. And Brad made a mention on he said a ranging scope, but the crosshairs inside of the scope, we can jump. Let me see, we've covered the PCPs as well. I was going to show you this monstrosity here that was part of the, I don't know if you see it well.
Yeah, hold it closer to the camera. What brand is that?
That's a Hawk.
Wow.
That's a Hawk scope, and the gun is an Air Force Condor. Wow. And it's a 25 caliber PCP air rifle. It's quite a bit louder than the other ones are, but it's an awful lot more powerful. I use it for hunting and such too. So it's way overkill for shooting sparrows and starlings. So even though I did shoot one the other day out my bedroom window at 93 yards, starling with it the other day. So yeah. So
okay.
Wow. That big I didn't know any of this until I started researching for the Marauder that I bought, but that big dial on the side of that scope all that is a add-on piece that makes it easier to dial in your parallax.
Oh,
Yes.
I'm not
So
even going to
it's
begin to start to explain parallax because that would take years.
we'll do it. We'll do it.
Okay.
So I'm going to show you. We'll go to jump into the scope since you mentioned about scopes here. I want to show you a scope. This is a Vortex PST scope. It's a bit of an overkill for an air rifle, but that's what I had handy laying around. So there's parts of the scope, and what he's talking about is the part on the left-hand side of the scope. There's a knob on the left-hand side of the scope if it's a side focus scope. They also have scopes that have focuses on the end of the scope here that you twist around and around like this, and that adjusts the parallax of it, and it's a focus. And so if you think of parallax, what is a parallax in a scope? It's an apparent movement. If you move your head just slightly off centered in a scope, you will notice that the target seems to move. So what you try to do when you do that focusing is you try to minimize that. So you try to get all of the lines of the refraction coming into the scope to cross right there at the reticle. So if you can minimize that, then if you don't have your head in exactly the same spot in your scope, it's not going to make as great an impact down range when you shoot. If your parallax is off and you move your head slightly, you're not going to hit it even close to where you were trying to shoot, and your groups will open up greatly because the reticle is not where it's supposed to be in the center of the scope. So that's what the adjustables are for. And for the Hawk, the big wheel on the side is like a fine focus. So you can turn it very small increments. And it acts almost like a rangefinder because it's very accurate and you can get something in perfect focus. And once it's in perfect focus, you can see what the distance is on that. And you could actually mark your scope and say it's perfect focus at 45 yards. I'm in perfect focus. It's going to be at 45 yards. So it's that precise to where you can actually use it like a rangefinder. And inside the scope, the reticles, the crosshairs, I recommend to get something that has like a mil dot inside of it. Not so much to use it. Yes.
Can y'all see that?
yes.
So
Bring it down just a hair.
That one's a fancy one.
Lower it just a hair. There we go. That's centered. Cool.
So what he had held up there is a fancy one there. It's a Christmas tree reticle. So you can see that it looks kind of like a Christmas tree in the bottom half of the scope. So we'll talk a little bit about shooting in the wind and shooting at distance, which we're not going to do that much of with our air rifles, shooting at Starlings. But
let me show you one more before we move on.
Okay.
There's another
reticle.
That's a BDC.
That's a mil dot. Yeah, that's a bullet drop compensating reticle.
Right. That's more common on cheaper scopes than the mil dot is. Which you can get cheap scopes with mil dots, but
yes, yeah, you can get the center point scopes. That's a pretty good one with the mil dot. That's what's on this brown gun here that I shot, this Marauder. That's a center point scope. It has target turrets on it to where you can adjust them without having to take the caps off, and you just have to twist them. It has an illuminated reticle if you want to shoot in low light. And there, it has a side focus on it. So this one is about $100 scope, and it's a very good one, center point. Things about the scope. So you got this end down here, the fat end down here. So the bigger it is around,
oh, we lost audio. Hang on. Greg, can you hear us? We cannot hear you.
I can hear him.
Oh,
We
it's
also-
you that lost me.
We also have a question from Travis and Anna.
Okay.
For a general
We got you back. Okay, go ahead.
at 900 FPS, at what distance should consider a regular reticle versus range or holdover reticle?
I didn't hear you very well.
Yeah, you were breaking up.
Okay.
Courtney.
Just try again. Can you hear me now?
There you go.
Okay. For a general 22 caliber at 900 FPS, at what distance should folks consider a regular reticle versus range or holdover reticle?
45 yards. So
you're saying if their maximum distance is going to be more than 45 yards, you'd want one.
Yeah, you'll want one. So if it's less than 40 yards, 30 yards, the center crosshair is going to be fine. On that, most of those will have a thinner part in the middle and a fatter part on the outside. And you can actually use that as your first hold dot on there as well. And we can talk about the hold dot concept here shortly. But for like this Marauder, if you have it sighted in at the right distance, you're going to be still within a Starling all the way out there to that distance. So you'll be able to shoot that Starling out to 35 or 40 yards by not having any holds other than a little bit high and a little bit low on the Starling. So from the head down to the feet, and you'll still get that Starling. So you don't have to have the mill dots to do this at all. So you can use just a regular scope to do that.
Where the mill dot comes in really handy for me is, most of you know, we have a farm. So I may shoot at a house sparrow at 10 yards, and then I may drive down to the barn and shoot at one at 60 yards.
Yes.
And trying to do a holdover on a pellet gun or subsonic 22 rifle for me is hard because they drop so fast.
Yes.
Once they break, when they start dropping, the bottom's falling out. So, you know, if you're going to sit on your deck and you're going to shoot at your gourd rack 20 yards away, and that's all you're ever going to shoot, you definitely do not need the more expensive reticle.
But if your price is there and it's got one, I'd get one mill dot every time on there. So one thing about scopes too that you got to be aware of is that, like on your mill dot scopes, they're actually only set on a second. There's two types of scopes that you'll get: a second focal plane scope and a front focal plane scope. So the difference between there is where the reticle sits. It either sits behind the magnification lens or in front of the magnification lens. So if you're in front of the magnification lens, it becomes a front focal plane scope, FFP. And what that has the effect of doing is that it keeps the mills accurate at any power that you set the scope on. So if you take and drop the power of your scope down to say 4 on there, your reticle will get very small, but it will still be 1 mil in between the dots at 4 power. If you crank it up to 12 power, now your reticle gets bigger and it is still 1 mil between the dots. So when you're shooting really, really long distance, that is a big factor in there, because you can use that for ranging, true ranging there. If you have a second focal plane scope, then your reticle sets back behind and it stays the same size no matter what power you set your scope on. So that scope's mill dots are only accurate at 1 power, and it's usually the highest power in the scope. So what I always suggest to people to do when they're shooting a second focal plane scope with a mill dot, for what we're doing with it, is to find the power that's the most optimum for your sight and just leave it there. Don't adjust it up and down anymore. For here, I set it on about 8 power and I never touch it. Then after shooting, you will learn those dots very, very well. They're not going to be 1 mil apart. They're going to be some other variation of that. It may be 2 mils apart, but you will learn how to hold. You can hold the top of a dot, the bottom of a dot, the middle of a dot, in between dots, and you'll learn that well enough that as long as you don't mess with your scope and change the magnification, or always come back to that magnification that you set for your sight, then you're going to be very accurate at any distance within your colony. Because my colony is fairly sizable, and it stretches for a pretty good ways. So from here to the back of my gourd racks down there is about 85 yards. And the front is 40 from where I'm sitting right now. So there's a 40-yard difference between the front of my racks and the back of my racks. So I have to be able to do that. So that's a thing to consider. And the objective, the fat part at the end of the scope, like I said, if it's the bigger it is, the easier it is to get something on target. But the biggest factor on that to people who hunt is that the bigger the scope is, the more light that it can gather. And so when you're like, if you were like deer hunting and you're hunting, a lot of times the deer come out right at the break of daylight or right at the break of dark, it allows you to be able to see in low light better. So you can take like how big is your objective and then what power you set the scope on, and it'll give you a millimeters that goes into your eye of light. So if it's a 50 millimeter objective on your scope and you got it set on 5, then that, you know, so you can divide those out and you end up with a millimeter. So your eye can do 7 millimeters is as big as it can dilate to. So anything that gets bigger than 7 is too much, it's wasted. So I always shoot like a 44 to a 50 millimeter objective lenses. That's what I'm used to. But common on the cheaper scopes, they're 40. So a lot of the cheaper scopes are 40. And power wise on the scope, you don't really have to have a super high powered scope. 3 to 9 scope or 3 to 12, 4 to 12 is plenty. Brad said he had a 4 to 16. I have a 4 to 16 on this one over here as well. I think it's kind of similar to his scope. And that's quite a bit overkill. I got it set on 12, and that's what I leave it on. I don't change it. My Marauder I set on 8. It's a lower powered gun. And so my distances that I shoot, I can usually stop around 45 yards with it. But you know, I've hit starlings out to 70 and 80 with it as well, 22 caliber on that.
Question.
Yep.
It says, what advice can you give someone when shooting a pellet gun in windy conditions?
Yes, wind is not your friend. Anybody can shoot long distance if it's not blowing, if the wind's not blowing. But if the wind's blowing, it makes a huge distance. So the guys that shoot the best are the guys that can shoot in the wind. So you would think that the wind, how much can it blow off a bullet? I mean, how can it even do that? Well, it can blow a 747 airplane off course. So it can definitely blow a pellet off. And you're thinking, it's going so fast, how can it do it? But even at like 30 yards with a 22 caliber pellet, going 900 foot per second, like he was saying before, a 10 mile an hour full value crosswind at you coming from 90 degrees, just 10 miles an hour, which is just enough to start making the tree leaves shake pretty good, will blow you off about 3 inches.
Wow.
So at 30 yards. So Greg, it makes a difference.
Greg, you used the term full value.
Yes.
That means, for those that don't know, that means wind completely perpendicular to the bullet travel path.
90 degrees to the bullet path. So that's a full value wind. So then what happens when the wind is not coming at you from the 90 degrees, is coming at you from 30 degrees. Now you have to make an adjustment because it's not going to push it off near as far.
Yeah,
we got 2 frogs here now.
I hear them.
Singing each other. So you have to be able to know where the wind's blowing from. So if you can't see them out here, but I have wind flags. So I hang wind flags in the trees and stuff out here so that I can see. I have a wind meter inside of my house. And there's one on my shed over here. It's an anemometer and stuff over here. It gives me speed and direction of the wind. Then I have wind flags that I watch as well. So wind is critical if you don't want to miss. If you don't really mind missing once in a while, then don't worry so much. I can tell people, if you want to be safe, if you know the wind's blowing from your right to your left, hold on the right side of the starting. Don't leave him. but hold on him on the edge of him, because it's going to blow some. Maybe a half an inch, and maybe 3 inches, but it's going to blow some. So always favor holding into the wind, always. And high winds, you're going to miss most of the times. It's just too hard to do. And I used to shoot a lot of like long range rifle competitions and such. And so when you are there and you're shooting, say, 1,200 yards, oh, it's just absolutely insane, the amount. So you got like a 60-inch drift off, you know, in the wind at that distance, or you have to hold 5 foot away from the target. You're not even on the target. You just barely can see the target in your scope, and you have to hold over there to hit it. And that's with the bullet traveling 3,000 foot per second. It's just, it's unreal. So yeah, the wind is not your friend.
And it's windy a lot here in Missouri in the spring.
Yeah.
We have
Yes.
challenges with that. So thanks.
Yes. Always holding to the wind. And it's not exactly a halving, you know, if it's blowing out at a quarter value or something, it's not exact, but it's close enough that you can just about count on that and just hold on that side of the bird just a little bit, and you'll be able to hit a starling in pretty good winds, especially if it's only 20 or 30 yards or less, just a half inch or so at 20 yards.
Okay.
So yeah, so you get about 70 yards out there, then I have to hold 6 inches. So that's quite a bit off. So you have to hold about 6 inches off. Yeah.
There is a great YouTube channel for anybody that wants to learn more about shooting pellet guns. It's called Ted's Holdover.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
He does a lot of slow motion videos where
Yes.
you can see how much
excellent.
the pellet moves, and that guy's not even a bird guy, and he's a starling killing dude.
Yes. Yeah, he does a lot of pigeon shoots and stuff. He has a good channel, and he's got the slow motion cameras and stuff. But if you're really paying attention and you shoot a pellet, you can actually see it fly through the air. So when you shoot, you can watch it fly through the air, and you can watch the wind drift your pellet with your naked eye. They call that in the firearms word trace. You can watch your trace. So you can actually watch a bullet fly through the air, and it's amazing. You can watch it be way off of the target and then drift into the target. So that's if you've never
watched a bullet do that, take some of your pellets, get you a little dab of white paint the inside of the skirt. That helps pick them up, and it's cool to watch the flight of a bullet, because you're thinking, I can't believe the wind did that. I mean, you'll see it go 3 inches to the right and then curve back in like a major league curveball.
Yeah, looks like a curveball. Yeah, exactly. So
Greg,
anything else on?
Yeah, another question. I know that you recommended certain types of supports for guns. What do you recommend?
This one right here is a really good one if you're like me and sit on your back porch.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's a Caldwell bog pod.
It's a Caldwell dead shot.
Dead shot. Okay.
Yeah. Bog pod and them are similar.
That's right.
So this is a dead shot max. I use it. It holds my gun up unsupported, so I can just sit there. So I can sit out on my back porch, and I don't have to hang on to the gun. I don't got it propped up against the wall. It's always there, sitting there, being ready. And it's very stable. 2 points of contact, front and a back rest, and it's pivotable and rotatable, so you can spin and rotate it and tilt it up and down, and it still will hold itself in place. So I don't know. That's what I got in the picture. I don't know if you can.
Yes, that's cool.
So you can see that it's supported by itself.
Yeah.
And
they're very sturdy. I bought one and was very surprised at how stable they hold the gun, even with me bouncing and shaking and too much caffeine.
Yeah. So you can get that set in there. You can settle your shoulder into the gun stock, put your cheek on, cheek weld, nice and light. And one of the things like on the trigger pull, to make you a better shot, it's a focus on your trigger pull and not be thinking about the gun shooting. If you start thinking about the gun shooting, that will mess you up. And do not concern yourself with shaking a little, because you're going to shake and move around on target some. But the human mind always brings things back to center. So if you just focus on your target center and just keep it thinking, you know, pull, 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 pull on the trigger, and just let the gun go off, you'll be way, way, way more accurate. Do not use the tip of your finger on the trigger. That's the most sensitive part of your finger, and you don't want to do that. You want to put it down further down here, closer to your joint in there, so that you can pull straight back towards the back of the stock, and it's less sensitive, so you don't get that sensation of pulling the trigger on there. So it's a pressing motion, or just a squeeze, 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 slow, and don't worry about the gun going off, and don't worry about not being just dead solid, lock solid, steady, and you'll actually be more accurate when you do that.
Can you get into some of the other techniques along that lines, like breathing and follow through? I know follow through is one of my problems. If I don't follow through, I always miss.
So on the guns there, so you don't want to squeeze the gun really hard. But you don't want to just let it just be in there. So I set it into my shoulder, up kind of high, not down low, but up kind of high on your collarbone area up in here. And I set, as you can see, like at the back end of this stock, how it's built. See a butt hook?
Yeah.
I will actually set that into my clavicle area here. So some of the things that will make you a better shot is when you mount your scope, you mount it properly onto your gun so that it's in a comfortable position for you. So you have like on an air rifle, most all air rifles are 11mm dovetails where you mount your scopes and such, but you can get adapters for those that will adapt it from 11mm up to a regular Picatinny rail, so you can run a regular rifle scope and mounts. So you'll have to have your scope mounted in rings that mount to your rifle on there. So some of the important things to do on that is to have it at the right height on your rifle. So if you have your scope too high up on your rifle, you're not going to be able to get a good cheek weld on the rifle stock, and that will make you shoot poorly. So you want to get the right height of rings for the gun that you've got. You want the scope to sit as close to the barrel as you can do it. You can see this gun doesn't look like that. It looks like it's 2 foot off of there. So it's very tall, but it's actually designed well. It actually works well. You need it to set down low. You need it to set square. You need to set at the right height to where when you put your cheek on the rifle stock, it sits just like this on your cheek. And your eye relief needs to be perfect. So if you shoulder the rifle up nice and semi-tight, but into your shoulder here, and you close your eyes and lay your cheek down on your stock, lay it down, and then open your eye, you should be seeing through your scope perfectly. So you should not have to move your head at all. If you have to move your head, it's not right. So you should be able to get yourself really comfortable, and then open your eyes. You should see a complete full circle in your scope. You get that by adjusting it forwards and backwards, closer or further away from your eye. And it needs to be a perfectly round circle, no shadows on the edge. And you don't want to have to move your cheek weld. So if you do that height-wise and distance-wise from your eye, then you will shoot better, just a mere fact that you're comfortable in there and you're not having to try to adjust.
Ooh,
so if you have to chase,
I've never heard that before. That's awesome.
If you have to chase your face, then you're not going to be as accurate as you could be.
And it's also, trying to think of the right way to say this, that's a good point for everybody. And I struggle with that because I'm barrel chested and I have to mount my scopes really far back. But especially for the ladies, like Kathy, she's only like, she says she's 5'2", but she's really like 4 feet 8 inches tall. I don't know if y'all can y'all see this, or is it too dark?
No, we see it.
Okay. The distance from the crotch of your elbow to where your trigger finger lays on the trigger, that is your proper length of pull. Mm-hmm. And length of pull is the distance from here to here. So this is a cheap Walmart special gun, and you can see I took the butt plate off and took a saw and cut the gun down. And somebody's probably thinking, well, boy, you just ruined the value of that gun. Well, number one, I didn't care because guns are tools and I don't sell them. But if you look, since I did that, if you look, I can put that gun right there and my trigger finger lines up exactly where it needs to be. So make sure a lot of your guns are not going to have a adjustable length of pull. Some of them do, some of them don't. But hey, it's your gun. If it doesn't fit you, take a saw to it, make it fit. You either going to, if I got a gun that doesn't fit me, I can't hit with it. I'm just going, I don't have a use for it. So do whatever you got to do to make your gun fit you.
Okay.
And we'll pull the Marauder back up. Do you see that device on the back of the stock?
Yep.
Adjustable cheek piece.
Yeah.
So that is on there so that even if I don't have exactly the right height off of my stock for the scope the way it's set, I can adjust that in small increments until it is perfect for me. So some guns you can do that to, just like my redneck. That's exactly what that's for, because you can see how high that sits off.
Right
there. It has to, because of the magazine that goes into the gun. So it has to clear that, and you have to be able to load it. And so it has to set a little bit higher than normal. And so for me, I'm put on a cheek rest of some sort. It can be anything. You can just tape, foam pull noodle on it, for all that matters, because it doesn't really matter what it looks like as long as it works right.
Right.
And get that height perfectly right for you. That makes a lot of difference, a huge difference in the accuracy on there. And don't hold the gun too hard. Let it shoot. They don't kick very hard. Even the springers don't kick that hard. They just kick funny. So don't worry about it shooting, and make your better shot. And if you're struggling around with the group size and you're not shooting a big little hole like Brad showed, change pellets and keep trying, and you'll find when it shoots like that, even just about any gun will shoot good if you find the right ammo.
Yep.
So breathing, I've always heard you breathe in and hold your breath or something like that.
Yeah, people will tell you to breathe in and let your air out halfway and hold it and shoot. I don't do that.
You don't?
Myself. I've shot so much that it doesn't matter to me. So I'm not really cognizantly aware of, I'm going to let half of my breath out and then I'm going to hang on to it. I shoot.
If I do that.
I shoot with both my eyes open.
Yeah.
So I don't close one eye. I got both eyes open. If you'll see a picture of me, I sent you one, I think, or sent Brad one with a picture of me actually shooting, and both of my eyes are open. So that's kind of different than a lot of people, but I shoot with both eyes open. And that's about it for shooting accurate. I mean,
okay.
You can, Greg, I'm left-handed, so I've always got a different opinion about everything, but you can shoot with both eyes open because you shoot right-handed.
Right-handed, right-eyed.
Dominant. Yes. Yeah. If somebody tries to, if somebody's shooting cross-eye dominant, you've got to shoot with your
if you're cross-eyed, if you're right-handed and left eye dominant, I say learn to shoot left-handed.
Yes, yes,
Don't
absolutely.
don't even bother. Just shoot left-handed.
But if you're not going to, you must close
You
your
gotta,
top eye.
yes,
Must.
yeah,
Or
you'll have to put a shield
put a
over it.
card in front of it or something.
Yeah, if you're
Bill
across.
Winger wants to know about cleaning a pellet rifle.
Real quick,
Yes,
I will be very passionate about eye dominance. I agree with that, and I'm an example. My body switch due to a virus as a child, and I taught myself to shoot left-handed. Taught my son; he is right-handed, left-eyed, and as a family of instructors, I'm very passionate, especially with instinctive shooting, which sometimes for what we have to do, this stuff is quick. It's very quick.
Yes.
And if you learn to shoot with that dominant eye, we have found many kids going into adults being much more successful.
Yes.
Wow.
You're going to lose my gun.
I thought about that. It's good points.
If anybody doesn't know how to check eye dominance, I'm holding my hands at my camera. You just put your hands out in front of you like that, looking at an object, and pull your hands slowly back to your face, and that will go to your dominant eye every time.
Wow.
Bill has a question. He says, what about cleaning a pellet rifle?
Don't.
I've not ever cleaned mine. I don't know if I've ever cleaned a pellet rifle in my life. And even big bore rifles, I don't clean them unless the accuracy suffers. So I just let them be. So I'm not a big cleaning enthusiast at all. So I just don't.
Okay.
I'm not either, but I did want to mention this because I know some people just can't stand it. Greg, I don't have an air rifle with me. Can you hold one of yours up so I can see the barrel? Okay, y'all see that big fat barrel?
Yeah.
On that air rifle? That's not the barrel.
No.
That's a shroud. The barrel of all air rifles, imagine a paper towel tube, which would be the shroud, with a number 2 pencil stuck down the inside of it. That's what the barrel looks like. They're very thin. They're very light. The rifling is not nearly as deep as it is on a powder burner.
Here, I'll just take the end cap off of this Marauder.
Oh no, he's gonna tear up his gun. But
So
the main thing about cleaning an air rifle is do not ever.
Oh yeah.
Do not
you see how
use
the barrel's inside?
Yep, much smaller.
Don't ever use a brass brush. If you've got a really nasty pellet gun, only use a nylon brush with a fully coated rod in the barrel. They make some little felt pellets that you can shoot through your barrels, and I have done that occasionally. So
okay. So what else, Brad, did you want to cover? Do we have any questions for Greg?
Kyle Shepard's got his hand raised, and Debbie has a Crossman 1077.
Yes.
Debbie, if you can hit birds with that, I wouldn't go buy a 22 caliber.
Nope.
The 177 just doesn't have as much downrange energy as a 22 does, but we're not moose hunting, so
you
don't need a lot of downrange energy.
I'm going to break in here just a second. This is Kyle. Early on in my air rifle career, I bought some subpar pellet rifles and ended up on 2 occasions running into squibs. So if you don't know what a squib is, it's when a pellet will get stuck
in a barrel
inside the rifle. So that can cause some big issues for your pellet rifle, really any gun. So I don't know if y'all want to touch on that just a bit.
Yeah. Now this is a big hazard when it comes to these magazine-fed Marauders and such that have the rotating rotary clip magazine. So you load like 8 or 10 pellets inside of a rotary magazine, and let me get one here. That one's locked in place.
I have one.
You got one?
Yep.
Look at you.
So yeah. So what will happen to people is they'll forget that they've loaded the gun in there. They'll do something like put more pellets into their magazine, stick it back in there, and then put the bolt back forward. And now they just push 2 pellets into the chamber of their gun.
Done it.
Then they try to shoot it, and then it won't make it out of the barrel, and now you got them stuck in there. And then what a lot of people will do is they'll say, well, I didn't hit. And they'll bolt another one in there, and before you know it, you got 6 pellets stuck in your barrel. They're very, very, very hard to next to impossible to get back out of the barrel. So if you shoot and you don't see an impact, then you need to run a cleaning rod or something down the barrel to make sure it's not got an obstruction in it. You will ruin an air rifle if that happens.
Shannon Smith has her hand up.
I think that's so she can tell on herself about doing that, stacking them pellets in the barrel. Go ahead, Shannon.
Need to unmute.
You'll have to unmute, yep. Hey, Shannon. Hey, Shannon.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Now we got you.
Well, Brad was correct. All that for nothing. That I was just raising my hand to say, been there, done that. Y'all have helped me through that saga. Yeah.
I thought that was more like a hallelujah than a question.
Yep, it was. It was like, whoo, been there, done that, learned that lesson. So yeah, I'm lowering my hand now. Learn the lesson.
I've been there with you, girl. Shannon, this is Kathy. I've done it too, so don't feel bad.
Yep, I've been through several pellet guns in the last couple of years, but living and learning.
Yep. So, and if I haven't covered some subject, then go ahead and ask me some questions on it. I've kind of run out of things I was going to talk about at this point.
We didn't talk about adjustable triggers, and most of these better rifles have adjustable triggers.
Yeah. I don't like a light trigger. I don't like one overly heavy. To me, the more important part on the adjustment of a trigger is to take any of the slack out of it. But then you got such triggers that are 2-stage triggers that have slack built into them on there. I don't find myself a lot more accurate by any stretch to have a super light trigger on there. So I like a trigger that's around 3 pounds a pull weight on there. So that is not a super light trigger, and I can shoot better with a 3-pound trigger because I can feel the movement of the trigger. I actually like that, and that's my preference. So I do not adjust them lighter.
Yeah, I guess everybody's got their own opinion about that. I like mine about 1.5 pounds because I fought target panic for years, and unless that was something I picked up shooting bows.
Well, I'll tell you, target panic is made worse with a lighter trigger than it is a heavier trigger.
Really?
Yes, sir.
What is target panic?
Target panic is like with a bow, your brain will not let you take a recoil or an impact without some pre-movements to your shot. So you will anticipate that you're fixing to shoot that bow, and you will jerk the trigger back and shoot the bow before you are actually on your target aiming point. And the biggest problem with that is that you're afraid of the aim. And when you settle that pin or in crosshair on a rifle on that target, you're fixing to have a recoil. You're fixing to have an explosion in your hand. And it doesn't seem like a bow would be much of an explosion, but it's quite drastic in all reality. And as soon as your brain thinks you're on that aim, you'll jerk the trigger. So that happens with people with guns because they get to thinking, oh, I'm on target, I'm fixing to shoot, and they'll jerk the trigger back and push the gun off to the side and make a really bad shot. And it all comes down and to worrying about hitting. So if you think too much about aiming, that's why I said earlier, don't worry about your aim. Don't worry about wiggling on target. You're going to do it. Only worry about the squeeze of the trigger, and it's nice and slow. It should take you several seconds, and you should say, pull, 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 and then it'll just go off. So you should always do that, and you don't slap the trigger. You don't put your finger on the trigger and do that. That is not how you shoot a gun or a bow. So you put your finger on the trigger, hold it there. If it's a 2-stage, you'll take the slack out of the trigger and just sit there. You get yourself on there, you're wiggling around on your crosshair, you're just fine where you want to be. And then you just start saying to yourself, pull, 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 and you slow, 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 and then it'll go off. And you'll find that more times than not, you'll be dead center of the target because your mind will drift everything back into the center. If you worry so much about aiming and you worry so much about this thing's fixing to go off in my hand, you'll make bad shots all the time. And that's a target panic.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Question from Robert Bynum. I know this is about air rifles, but anyone use 22 with rat shot?
No.
No, not rat shot.
You would have to be
really close, 10
yards
or less. Yeah,
15
really close.
feet from a sparrow to kill it with rat shot.
Yeah, no.
No, I don't.
No, I do use a 22. I do have a 22. I got probably 20 of them in there, but yeah. So yeah,
we've talked about most everything that I wanted to cover. A few things more specific to 22s than Greg, I don't know if this is a problem with pellet guns or not, because I don't shoot this way. But can y'all see me, or is it too dark?
It's getting dark, but I can see you.
Let me turn the lights on.
Yeah. No, hang on. He's in the dark. He's out in another zip code.
He's in Alabama. He's on another.
He's a Bama.
I'm on my back porch.
Okay, we got you. At least the sun's not on your head. Oh, don't do that.
One reason I wanted to talk about 22s is because as long as you can find ammo, they are a cheaper alternative to an accurate gun than a pellet gun is.
They're also far more dangerous.
They are
downrange.
They are,
and you have to be way in the country before you use one.
Yeah, you're right. From where I'm sitting, it's 1.5 miles behind my colony to a road or a house, and then to the south it's 3 miles. So
yes, but I've run the azimuth on your house. I know what directions you can shoot.
This is a good example though of a cheap, accurate rifle. This is a Marlin that I bought at Walmart. You will notice it is bolt action.
Let me step away and I'll get one of mine and we'll show it.
Okay. It's bolt action 22 rifles are bolt action rifles of any caliber are inherently more accurate than a semi-automatic. On a semi-automatic, the chamber has to be machined larger to take the bullet, the way the bullet is pushed in and pulled out. So this rifle was like $160, and this is a $100 scope, and I have killed hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of house sparrows with this rifle. So for under $300, you can get into a very accurate rifle. There are some shells. These are cheap bulk ammo. Do not use this for shooting sparrows. It's high powered and it's not as accurate. I always want subsonic ammunition. This one is one that you can use in fairly close quarters. This is the only bullet that I know that's made this way. These are made by a company out of Mexico. The name of the company is Aguila. and this is a 22 sniper subsonic. It is a 22 short case with a 60 grain chunk of lead on the front of it. Most 22 bullets are 36 to 40 grains, so 60 grains is significantly heavier than the normal. So when it starts dropping, it drops quick. You also have CCI makes CB shorts and CB longs. Neither one of these will function in a semi-automatic rifle.
Now those, the reason you use those, Brad, though, is so they won't travel as far, right?
They will travel.
They will travel. That 60 grain bullet on that sniper subsonic, I don't know how far it will travel, but unless you're shooting up at normally I'm shooting house sparrows off of fence posts or bluebird boxes, so I'm not shooting.
You're shooting level.
I'm shooting level, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
That little CB short right there has got a muzzle velocity of about 500 feet per second.
Yeah, it's gonna hit the dirt within 100 yards at the level shot.
Okay.
And Aguila makes some ammo that doesn't even have powder in it. It just has the primer, fires a projectile, and it seriously, even without a suppressor, it's almost silent. But I've killed sparrows with it too. You got to be within 20 yards of them. I think it's called a Colibri or a Super Colibri.
Yes.
But somebody asked, and I think it was Kathy, said there were days she could hit and days she couldn't. The biggest problem, a lot of people do this and they don't realize it. When you prop a gun up, you prop it up here. Don't prop it up here. If you prop it on the barrel, you just change your point of impact by inches, and you change the harmonics of the barrel. Every time you shoot a projectile, the barrel does that, whether you see it or not. Well, you're not going to see it, but it moves. It's called the barrel harmonics. If you prop or rest your rifle on the barrel, you just change the dynamics of how the harmonics are going to work.
Wow.
Plus, you just changed your point of impact by probably an inch or two just because you got pressure against the barrel in one direction. So that is a definite no. Always prop on the forearm.
Okay.
What's that whiz bang you got in your hands there, Mr. Ballard?
This is a Ruger 1022T. So it's a semi-automatic 22, and if you can see, it's suppressed.
Oh yeah, I see that now.
Yeah. Also has the same kind of cheek piece on the back, so I can get my cheek weld perfectly right for my scope and such. So got a little butt hook on it and stuff. So this is my favorite 22.
It's kind of funny that you brought out a semi-automatic, because I was telling everybody while you were gone how much more accurate bolt actions were than semi-automatic.
I was listening to you. I got a headset in, and I would put this one up against your bolt action any day of the week.
Yeah, I know. I'm sure you would, but you can do a Ruger 1022 is probably the most customizable firearm made, if I had to guess. There's probably more aftermarket parts made for those.
So like right here is an aftermarket trigger. This is a Rimfire Tech trigger here. So it's an aftermarket trigger. It's one of those, it's 1 pound on there. Has a 20-minute angle base on it, a hammer forged bull barrel and such. And I can shoot a one-hole group with this every day, all day long.
Is that a Green Mountain barrel?
So it's the factory barrel from Ruger. So just a hammer forged factory barrel, 1022T for target.
Greg mentioned suppressors.
Yeah.
This is the greatest thing that I've ever bought in my entire life. It screws off this is a CZ rifle.
Anybody would ever want, anybody would ever want to see what the inside of a suppressor looks like right there.
Not all of them look that way.
They're very similar, every one of them.
But this suppressor, people, okay, in the movies, they call them silencers. They're really suppressors. People think, oh, you can't legally own that. Yes, you can. $200 tax stamp.
Yes.
And a Form 1.
Yes. Form 1.
And then you pay for your suppressor. When the government approves all that, you go pick it up and you start using it.
Yes.
This
and
is
it takes months to a year to even get approved. Yeah.
Yes.
We have a question. Courtney, you want
powderless ammo.
What was the name of the powerless?
Colibri. Aguila is the manufacturer. Colibri is the name of the ammo.
Yeah.
But this,
if I may, real quick, they're running 60 to 65 days right now.
Really?
They're only on the electronic ones.
On the electronic one since December. Yeah. I've been going around.
So I've got one I've been sitting on. I got one I've been sitting on a year now. Paper for 1 year, and I haven't got it yet. My buddy just had 5 of them go through in 2.5 months electronically. They were supposed to fill all of the paper ones first before they started the electronic ones, but they did not, because mine's still sitting there. So we got a bunch of these things.
Are y'all talking about going through a kiosk versus going through the standard snail mail route, or
it doesn't matter? I did 2 through the kiosk last year, and they still, even though the kiosk gets paper. So my last one I'm still waiting on was September. It's still coming through, but I'm talking to guys. I've been going to shops about every week, and they're, since the ones in December, they're about 60, 65 days. So if anybody's interested, that should speed things up considerably for this year.
Yes. No. Yeah. 2.5 months is what my buddy got his in. 2.5 months, and I've been waiting a year. So
hey,
is
guys,
that something? Yes.
I don't want to cut everybody short, but we're about an hour and 35 minutes into it now. If
we're having too much fun.
Yeah, but we're talking about guns, Kathy.
I know. I just want to give everybody a chance here to say if they have any questions. Now would be a good time to throw them in there, because we're gonna be ending pretty soon.
But total.
Well, heck, let's do a walk through the birds.
Okay, walk through your Greg's birds. Yay!
While Greg's going to walk through his birds, you're looking at total cost for a tax stamp and a suppressor. You're looking at $600 to $650.
Yeah,
it's yours forever.
Yeah, forever. Yeah, or until you die. Yep.
Wow. And I bet you're Sparrow and Starling free too, right, Greg?
Yes.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I'm getting closer.
Can we see?
Yes, we can see.
We'll flush them up here right close to dark, like you're supposed to do.
Mine flushed up right at dark, and I think I've got about 50 migrants sitting on my gourd racks.
A lot of these won't fly. Go to see like that. Sits there and looks at me.
If you'll shoot one of those fence posts with your pellet gun, they'll fly. That's what I do.
So you can see they're scared to death of me.
Yeah, right.
But there goes this flock right here.
What have you got in the middle there? Are those
Hey, Trace.
Oh.
Can you see those?
Yeah.
Yep.
Wow.
Your eggshells. I got 3 feeding trays in the middle.
Cool. Wow.
Them's already inside.
That's quite a stroll.
Yeah, it takes a while. And I'll turn around and show you from where I shoot from. We'll get back here to the back one. This is the new one I just put up. It's already about half full of birds.
Oh my goodness.
See the house?
Yeah, wow.
That's where I shoot from.
Dang.
Yeah, I got racks that you guys don't ever see. back to back and little red barn houses that Brad gives me crap about.
I don't give you as much as Tony does.
Yeah, he's funny.
That's awesome.
He uses a 20 gauge scope. He's a sissy anyway.
I should have brought my gourd up here that's got about 47 20 gauge pellets in the side of it.
Very nice. Wow.
We have a question. Does anyone feed oyster shells? Yes.
Yes.
Some people do.
You got to be careful. A lot of times they got coral blended in with their oyster shells and not pure.
Right. And my birds just don't eat them. Mine will eat 20 pounds of eggshells before they'll eat 2 pounds of oyster shells.
Yeah, mine too.
Yeah, eggshells.
But I still offer them back up when I run out of eggshells.
Yeah, when I run out of eggshells, I'll put them out and they'll eat them, but they prefer to not.
Right. Okay.
All right.
Awesome. Wonderful presentation, Greg. Really awesome. Thank you very much for doing this.
Oh, we could talk more and more and more, but I thought people were probably getting tired of it.
I think I'm running out of disk space here on the recording.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You did a good job, Greg.
Yeah, wonderful.
One last point about my suppressor that I love so much. It has enabled me to start killing both sparrows at one time.
Yes.
Now, instead of, if I wait till the female goes in the box, I shoot the male off the fence, then the female sticks her head out and goes, "What was that?" And that's the last thing she hears.
That's the last thing that went through her mind, wasn't it?
That's the last thing that goes through her mind. But I killed 6 sparrows last Friday. I was off and working on the farm, and I killed 6 house sparrows. It was 3 doubles. And
wow.
Before, I was never able to do that.
Wow.
So,
all right. Yeah. I think we have covered all the questions. I don't see any other new ones. Everyone, thank you for joining tonight. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, you guys can ask in the chat or send me a private message if you want to. I'll answer.
Yep. Good night, everybody. Thank you. Purple Martin Fanatics, our Facebook
group.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Bye.
Good night, everybody.
Bye-bye.